Hello and welcome to another episode of the PropSwap podcast. We are your hosts, Ian Epstein.
And Luke Pergande.
And we are also the founders of PropSwap, the first marketplace to buy and sell sports bets. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We've got another great episode for you. We will wrap up all the division madness that happened in week 18, preview a little of the super wild card weekend. It's not just regular wild card weekend, but it's super wild card weekend now. But first, I thought we would start with the college football championship. College football season is in the books. Michigan defeating Washington on Monday night, covering the spread, but the total staying under. Luke, yet another long shot reaches the championship but falls short. Add it to the list. We've got Washington, they were as high as 100-1 coming into the season. The Diamondbacks were 200-1 during the season and made it to the World Series. The Heat were 240-1 during the play-in tournament and made it to the NBA Finals. The Florida Panthers were 150-1 in the first round, made it to the Stanley Cup. San Diego State was 150-1, made it to March Madness Finals. Eagles were 50-1 before the season, where they reached the Super Bowl, and then TCU last college football championship was 250-1 to reach the championship. Luke, that's all within the last 12 months, and that's literally every major. That's every major event. I just mentioned there where Eagles were the quote unquote shortest odds there, 50-1. But what were your thoughts, takeaways from Michigan's victory?
Yeah, it's like, Vegas Golden Knights and Loyola Chicago if you go outside the past year, but crazy list for just 12 months. And yeah, the Eagles would obviously be the shortest odds. You had to get a little bit cute to find them at 50. You had to get them before they got A.J. Brown on draft day. But, we know lots of people that bet futures odds the morning after the Super Bowl for the next season. So it's not crazy to think. Yeah, I thought Washington would have played a little bit better. I thought I knew their defense stunk, but I thought they wouldn't. I thought Michigan's O-line wouldn't dominate as much as they did. So, just thought it would be closer. Obviously, for us, not a ton of in-game sales when a team just blows the doors off the other opponent. So it would have been a little bit more fun if Washington at least hung around, but they didn't. So, congrats to the Epstein family. I know you get a bunch of Michigan Wolverines in your immediate family, 3 out of the 4, excluding you, of course. So I'm sure they're happy. Sure, Dave Portnoy and a bunch of other Tom Brady and many other famous Michigan alum are happy, and on to the NFL.
Yeah, my phone was blowing up last night after the win. A lot of family members. I'm happy for Michigan. I think this applies in all sports where it matters to be battle tested. Michigan, this was their 3rd year in a row of reaching the semifinals, and I think that really played a part in the game against Alabama, where they did not buckle under the pressure, down 7, got to go the length of the field to send into overtime. I look at the Nuggets last year, the NBA Finals, like they had been through some battles together, in previous years to then make the finals. So I think this applies to all sports, that I would definitely bet on the team that's been in the big spot before, that's that knows how to kind of battle adversity and the pressure. So really happy for the players. Blake Corum stuck around for an extra year. There's an interview with him basically saying, I returned to school to go win a championship. So really happy for them, but definitely still a great season for Washington. I mean, they should not hang their heads low. But there were a lot of there were a lot of PropSwap customers who were uneasy about this game heading into it. I was a little nervous. I thought it was going to be closer than it was, but a lot of big Washington sales happened on PropSwap leading up to the championship. Here are just a couple of those sales. A customer who bet $325 on Washington to win the championship at 40-1 odds back in March sold it on PropSwap for $4,500. Those were odds of plus 196 for the buyer, which was better than every sports book. And ironically, the person who purchased this ticket was the same person who purchased the Brock Purdy MVP ticket that we talked about a week or two ago for $125,000. So he came in once again. He got the best odds in the country, but it looks like just like his Brock Purdy ticket, the Washington ticket fell short. But yeah, same buyer as the Brock Purdy ticket.
Yeah, a little bit of a cold streak for him over the last 2 weeks. Look, we talked about this last week, so I'll keep it brief. Like, we've had a lot of smart people scratch their heads at that Brock Purdy the Brock Purdy purchase. In retrospect, everyone's apparently a sports genius after the fact, but at the time, it was pretty polarizing, the buying or selling of the ticket. We talked about this. He could have made 60% on his money in like 2 months, and it probably had an 80% chance of cashing, right? The Niners were like a 5-point favorite at home. So that purchase isn't crazy. And I would also argue this purchase isn't crazy. There was books at plus 170, right? And like he gets plus 196. It's like you get 15% better ROI on a team that people thought could win the football game. Like, it's both of those bets to me are like such positive EV. Like, I think he would do it again.
Right. And I think it's important to mention, actually, he bought this ticket on Thursday when Michigan was like minus 190. The numbers are moving towards Michigan as the game got closer, but this ticket was purchased on Thursday. And so I'm not saying he did do this, but at plus 196, there would have been an arbitrage opportunity for him at that price. You also just, especially when you talk about professional bettors, you never know what their portfolio looks like. So, for all we know, he had Michigan tickets in his portfolio, and this was just, an arbitrage to balance out his portfolio. So you can never, especially when it comes to a professional bettor like we know he is, you can never look at these purchases in a vacuum. But yeah, you can never listen. They always talk about getting the best of the number is the name of the game. So look, you cannot fault the guy for getting Washington plus 196 when at the time they were like plus 170 at the books. And then another big sale in Washington. This actually happened hours before kickoff. A customer who bet $2,500 at plus 620 odds on Washington just a few weeks ago sold their bet on PropSwap before the game for 6,200 odds of plus 190 for the buyer, which again, better than every sports book. Not as great as a discount as the Brock Purdy buyer, but yeah, a lot of big sales. Definitely was more leaning towards Washington in terms of who was maybe who was trying to get off of their positions. But as we always say, we can always find you a buyer if the price is right. People always ask, like, can you sell a big ticket? Can I sell a big ticket? Can I small ticket? Like, how quickly can it sell? And if the price is right, the ticket will sell on PropSwap.
Totally. Yeah, I was just gonna add, look, Michigan was single digits the whole season, so it makes sense that we had a lot more Washington sellers because they were just way longer odds, way more profit potential. Turn, of course, $100 at 100 to 1. If once they go down to 2 to 1, just for easy numbers, turn 100 into 5K. So, 100 into $3,333. So, amazing profit potential versus Michigan, just not much upside there for the seller. So it made more sense that more people would be selling Washington and selling Michigan.
Yeah. But there were still a lot of customers / Washington bettors who chose not to sell. As we've discussed previously on this podcast, we've got a customer who bet $200 at 100 to 1 odds, had the chance to sell the ticket for $7,500, but opted not to. He tweeted, I don't mind sharing this because, I put out a tweet talking about the ticket, and he tweeted in response that, quote, I'm holding this ticket. I also have a Michigan 8 to 1, which is the main reason I'm letting it ride, end quote. Now, he did end up deciding to list it for sale, but that was when Michigan was up 27-13 in the fourth quarter. So I'm not totally sure if his Michigan 8 to 1 ticket, what the payout there was, but I wonder if perhaps he's kicking himself just a tad, or again, I mean, he obviously he could have bet some money on Michigan as well too to hedge it. But I did find it interesting when I saw that ticket pop up on the marketplace late in the fourth quarter. But glad to know that he did have at least some money on Michigan.
For sure. Yeah, look, yeah. If you're riding one side naked, that's where I have the biggest issue with a sports bet, where you've came so far, you decide to make zero hedge bets, no selling on PropSwap, no cashing out. Like those are the games I had the biggest issue with. So he had another Michigan ticket. Who knows how big it was, but I appreciate that you at least had some upside on your opponent.
So that wraps it up for the college football season. It was another great one. Next year we will be having a 12-team playoff, which I think will add to just even more excitement and more long shots as we get down to the final few teams. But switching gears, going to talk a little NFL before we get to the playoff wildcard games. Thought we would just wrap up the divisions that were still in flux as we headed into week 18. Just quickly, Bills completing their comeback of the AFC East. On November 27th, the Miami Dolphins were minus 1,100 and the Bills were plus 900 to win the division. Bills end up winning 5 in a row, while Dolphins go 3-3, ending with that Sunday Night Football game. So Bills, again, 9-1 around Thanksgiving time to win the division. Meanwhile, the Eagles blow the NFC East. On November 24th, the Eagles were minus 750 and the Cowboys were plus 600. Eagles end up losing 5 of their last 6 games, and the Cowboys won 4 of their last 6. But if you go back further, the Cowboys won 7 of their last 9. So really just kind of a tale of 2 second halves there between the Eagles and Cowboys. But and before I move on, Luke, Eagles are also your account. By getting a wild card, they are now going to go to Tampa Bay on that Monday night game. Tampa Bay is currently a 2.5 point. Eagles are 2.5, or I guess it's moved to 3 now. Eagles 3-point favorite in Tampa Bay. What do you think the state of the Eagles are right now?
Horrific. I think they should be +3, not -3. The Eagles. So yeah, I think it's a total dumpster fire. I think that Tampa wins outright on Monday night.
Okay. I'm a contrarian, and so as bad as the Eagles have looked, I think I'm always the kind of person who's like, I'm gonna bet the team that looks terrible because I don't know. I'm just gonna kind of fade what the popular opinion is there. But everything you said there was right on. They do look horrible, and as I've said throughout the season, I was swapping them. When they were the favorites or second favorites. And then the other I think division and I think this might be the worst blown lead of the ones I just mentioned. The Jaguars losing the AFC South. Like I said, might be the worst one. At one point, the Jaguars were 8-3 and the number ones for a couple hours. They would have been the number 1 seed if the playoffs had started at that point. But on November 27th as well, the Jags were minus 1,000 and the Texans were 13-1 to win the AFC South. Jaguars end the season losing 5 of their last 6 games, including to Ryan Tannehill and the Titans in Week 18, and the Texans won 4 of their last 6 games to win the AFC South for the first time since 2019. The Texans will go on to face the Browns in the first game of the weekend on Saturday afternoon. Browns currently a 2.5-point road favorite. We talked about the Browns last week on Stake or Swap. We both like them, but it's always a little nervous to take a road favorite. So in the playoffs. So what are your thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I'll take the Texans in that one. That worries me. I do agree. Cleveland's defense is awesome. Obviously, the rookie quarterback thing scares me too. But I still think the Texans can do it. Texans win.
It'd be a bad look for me to pick the Texans after saying stake the Browns. But I kind of agree with you. Again, this goes back to the whole, it feels like the entire world will be betting the Browns because of the defense, because of the Joe Flacco story, and kind of dismissive of the rookie quarterback. But I'm gonna stick with my Browns pick. It'd be tough for me to say stake the Browns last week and then not at least pick them in the first round. So I'll go with the Browns. But yeah, just an epic collapse from the Jaguars. Before we get into the other games, thought I'd mention this bet. A PropSwap customer just had an absolute sweat of a bet that all took place on Saturday and Sunday. On December 14th, this customer used a $25 free bet to make the following parlay: Bucks to win the NFC South, Cowboys to win the NFC East, Texans to win the AFC South, and Bills to win the AFC East. After the Jags had lost the Titans, that clinched the Texans leg, and the only remaining leg was the Bills, obviously to beat the Dolphins. Before Sunday night, the customer received an offer on PropSwap for this ticket of $3,900, but he turned it down. And then at halftime of that Bills Dolphins game, with the Bills trailing 14-7, he received another offer for $2,750 and turned that down as well. The customer ended up just holding on to it and cashing it for $7,100. Turned a $25 free bet into $7,100 while turning down multiple offers before and during that Bills Dolphins game. So, just between those three things I just mentioned about the long shots, and again, they weren't even before the season. This was like late November, early December. People, were getting down on these long odds, and so I think just kind of looking forward to next season, it's just a good lesson that just because the season started does not mean that that's the last time you can be betting these division things. And even when it looks ugly, even when it looks grim, right? I mean, if we had talked mid-November, you would have said there's no way the Eagles don't win the AFC East, right? Or sorry, the NFC East. There's no way the Dolphins don't win the AFC East when the Bills are 6-6. But man, I tell you, this NFL is crazy, and a couple injuries here, a couple missed field goals there, and before you know it, you got a 13-1 ticket cashing in 5 weeks.
Yeah, the Jaguars, I think both of us weren't as bullish as other people were. So like, just between you and I, that one isn't as surprising. To me, the Eagles was the most surprising, like just total choke job. Like, I do think the Cowboys are a solid football team, but like the Eagles losing to the Seahawks and like the Giants, like that, I can't explain. Losing to the Cowboys at home, fine. Cowboys were incredible at home this year, but yeah, that was just a total choke job. The only answer I can have is Brian Johnson just was kind of in over his skis a little bit as being the first year OC for the Eagles. But outside of that, I mean, that was just an utter collapse in Philadelphia.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, just for the Jags, I agree. I was never high on them, but they lost to like Jake Browning and the Bengals, and then, like I said, Ryan Tannehill with their season on the line. The Eagles losing to the Giants, I think they kind of knew that they weren't going to win the division at that point, right? Because they're just assuming the Cowboys are going to beat the Commanders. So to me, just the Jags are bad just because of who they lost to and the stakes when it happened. But yeah, I mean, the Jags also were 2-0 in London and like 500 record in America. But before we get to stake or swap, I just thought we would touch on some of these other matchups. The first one being the Saturday night game, Dolphins at Chiefs. This game will be exclusively on Peacock. I'm just going to say it again and again because I feel bad for everyone out there who's going to have to spend 30 minutes on the phone with their parents or grandparents talking them through how to download and pay for Peacock on their TV. But Chiefs currently a 4-point favorite, probably catching the Dolphins at like the right time if you're a Chiefs fan, because this Dolphins team is banged up. It's going to be, I think they're expecting 0-degree weather. Obviously, we know the history of Miami and Tua in cold weather. So does this spell disaster, you think, for the Dolphins?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it does. I still, maybe I'm crazy, but I still trust the Chiefs. Like, I'm just like waiting for Kelsey and Mahomes to get back on the same page, and also like an MVS or I don't trust Kadarius Toney anymore, but what's his name, Rashid Rice, like some receiver just to have like a breakout game for Kansas City, and of course the game's in Kansas City, so I still trust the Chiefs, but at some point I'm gonna have to fade them because it's not the same team as it was last year.
Yeah, I think they just need to get a game, to kind of get their swagger back there a little bit, and maybe it'll be Saturday night, or maybe we'll be leaving that game being like, man, the Chiefs cannot get back to their old ways. But I think if the Chiefs end up balling out, winning, covering the spread, everyone's going to be like, they're back, and then we could be set up for another Chiefs Bills game in the playoffs, which would be great. But I agree. I think the Chiefs get back to their winning ways on this game, and then I think this is going to be the best game, most interesting game. Matthew Stafford and the Rams. Stafford will make his return in Detroit. This will be the Sunday night game. The place is going to be rocking. It's the most expensive ticket of all 6 of these games. Is that ticket in Detroit? Detroit currently a 3-point favorite at home after winning the NFC North for the first time in a long time. What are your thoughts on this game?
Two great teams. Sammy P of Nesson and I met up in Chicago. He said the Rams are his dark horse to win. Like, he said Super Bowl. I think we were just kind of talking like long shot futures. He kind of knew why I was asking that question. But man, game of the week for sure. Yeah, it's -3. So like, obviously everyone knows the Puka Stafford story. And Cooper Kupp has had a good year, not a great year. I lean Dolphins just because we talked about the Dolphins like literally week 1 on our NFL preview. So I just need to stick with my pick. And
wait, Dolphins?
Sorry, not Dolphins, Lions. Excuse me. Looking at the spread above that. We talked about the Lions the first week of the season, so I'll stick with the Lions. But man, are the Rams making that tough to stick with Detroit because LA looks really good all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Rams for a couple of reasons. One, I have not liked Detroit as much as everyone else. I think their defense is not good. I swapped the Lions last week when we talked about them. And then you got Stafford coming back. I think he wants to show out there in Detroit. You've got McVay, who coached Jared Goff there for several years. You got to think he knows the ins and outs of Jared Goff, what he likes to do, certain reads, third down, that sort of thing. And so between the Lions defense being not good at all, and you got to imagine McVay, kind of getting in the head of Jared Goff, I'm gonna go with the Rams on the road. And then obviously, I'm gonna back my boy Sammy P there, because I do think the Rams are good. They are frisky. He's still got Aaron Donald there. So I'm gonna go with the upset. Rams on the road.
Yeah, not many people talk about Aaron Donald this season. I feel like people always say he's the best player in the NFL, and like I feel like maybe I just haven't watched that many Rams games during the 18-week season, but not a ton of Aaron Donald love, and they're basically has been for the last decade.
Yeah, I mean, look, and just kudos to the Rams team. They were one of the top 3 favorites in terms of most losses, right? Top 3 or 4. We may have talked about them in terms of most losses. So kudos to this team for kind of bucking all the odds and getting to the playoffs. But before we get into stake or swap, speaking of the Lions, I wanted to do a little trivia question, a little Luke learns, and it's about the Detroit Lions. The Lions are going to the playoffs for the first time since 2016. The Lions have not won a playoff game since January 5th, 1992. Those 32 years are the longest active streak in the NFL of not winning a playoff game. who currently has the second longest active streak since winning a playoff game. And Luke, I'm going to give you a multiple choice. Okay, we're gonna make it a little easier. So, is it A, the Oakland / Las Vegas Raiders? Is it B, the Miami Dolphins? Or is it C, the Washington Commanders / Redskins?
Those are all good options. I'll go with the Raiders.
The Raiders is incorrect. The Miami Dolphins have the second longest active streak of not winning a playoff game for 23 years since the last time the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game. And as we predicted, I don't think that streak is going to get broken. I guess I don't think either of those streaks are going to get broken. I'm picking the Rams on the road, but yeah, will be interesting to see as both of those teams have an opportunity. Meanwhile, the Raiders and Commanders will be sitting at home, adding another year to that streak. But thank you for playing along. And so it is that time of the show for Stake or Swap. First up, we will be talking about the Buffalo Bills, the new, or I should say, the repeat AFC East champions, now currently 6.5 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. I will go first. I am swapping the Bills. A month ago, I talked about staking the Bills at 50 to 1. I'm going to pat myself on the back for that. But it is time to cash out right now and take those profits. I'm sure the first thing anyone with the Bills future is going to say is, I'll wait until they beat the Steelers. Obviously, they're going to beat the Steelers. They're a 10-point favorite. But guess what? That is baked into the odds. They are supposed to beat the Steelers. If they win and cover the spread, they're already the second favorite in the AFC. If you think their odds are going to move from 6.5 to 1 to 3 to 1, you are sorely mistaken. If there is any movement, it'll be probably closer to like 6 to 1 or 5.5 to 1. But here's something else that can happen: injuries, right? You never know what's going to happen, right? Whether it's Stephon Diggs or another injury on the defense, or God forbid, Josh Allen. You don't want to be sitting. They could win and still suffer an injury that could make their second round game, possibly against the Chiefs, even more difficult. And then also, this is a team that almost lost at home to Skylar Thompson in last year's playoffs. The Dolphins, the third string quarterback, and then got absolutely destroyed by the Bengals at home. So they are absolutely capable of laying a dud in the playoffs. Josh Allen ranks 11th in yards per pass attempt, which is a stat I like to look at. And he has the second most interceptions this year, behind only Sam Howell. Meanwhile, the Steelers were tied for third in turnover differential this year. So, we didn't really talk about this game earlier, but I think the Steelers at plus 10 is an interesting pick. I think the entire world will be putting the Bills money line or putting them in a teaser. And so I'm kind of leaning towards the dog there on the points, but you will not, if the Bills win, you will not see a huge increase in the odds. And so you might as well just sell that ticket right now and cash out, because after that epic run to get the 2 seed.
Yeah, look, I'll stake the Bills, but with an asterisk. If you bought a 50 to 1 ticket and you have the opportunity to sell it this week and you're not, that is foolish. This team, Josh Allen's got to be pissed, right? Like, he's lost to the Bengals and they lost to the Chiefs the year before that. Like, he's just got to be very upset at his lack of postseason success. And I think he'll be motivated to do it this year, especially with a down Chiefs team. Like, I have to imagine that he's a little bit more revved up than usual, because they're kind of his they're his daddy, the Chiefs have been over the last 5 years. And finally, there's like a season where they don't look as dominant as they have in the past. And like, I would think Josh would be revved up about that. I'm not worried about this weekend. I think they'll win by 17. The Steelers are a joke. Mason Rudolph has looked better than Pickett, though, so it is a different team with Rudolph versus Pickett, which I can't believe I'm saying that sentence. But I'll stake the Bills unless you have a 50-1 ticket.
Yeah, I mean, look, at any point did you, when they were down, I don't know, with the way they looked the first half against the Dolphins, down 14-7, and just not a team that I think has, that's up to the level of the Ravens or some of the other teams in the league. But moving on, next team we will be talking about are the Green Bay Packers, currently 90-1. They beat the Bears in Week 18 to get that wild card spot. They will be traveling to Dallas. At Dallas, Mike McCarthy will be facing off against his old team. Currently, the Packers are 7.5 point underdogs in Dallas, 100-1 to win the Super Bowl. Luke, we will start with you first. Are you staking or swapping the Packers?
Yeah, I'm gonna stake them at 100-1, as the spirit of this is sell them later on. You could even sell it in game if they jump out to a lead. That would be what I would be doing. I think if they can jump out to an early lead, you could sell that at new odds of 30-1 to a excited buyer. Obviously, Packer fan would be the easiest flip, but I think you could sell it if they jump out to a 17-7 lead, which I do think is feasible. I've trusted Jordan Love from second week of the season. He's been inconsistent, but I do think he has overall put out a good body of work. I trust Matt LaFleur enough, and I still just don't trust Dallas enough. Like, I don't think Dak's that good. CeeDee Lamb takes plays off. CeeDee Lamb, in my opinion, is the most talented receiver in the NFL, which is maybe next to Justin Jefferson. But he just takes plays off, and the running game stinks. Tony Pollard's been terrible this year. So yeah, I just don't trust the Cowboys enough, in combination with I trust the Packers enough. Again, if you get up 17-7, flip this thing for 3x.
Yeah. I will stake the Packers as well, kind of for those same reasons. I've liked the Cowboys all season long. They've always been the second best team in the NFC, but 7.5 seems like a lot, and I do think this game will be close. I think Packers are capable of winning it. I've also been on the Packers bandwagon all season long. They hit a rough patch in the middle of the season, but I think they are actually hitting their stride right now. Jordan Love looks good, and while the Cowboys have played well at home, sometimes I just think the Cowboys kind of buckle under the bright lights, under the pressure that all the Cowboys fans give them. So to your point, I think this game will be close. I will be taking the 7.5 on Green Bay, and as we talked about with college football and all these games, futures will be moving fast on PropSwap during these games, and so at 100-1, I do think there's good value, and it's way easier to move a long shot ticket on PropSwap during a game than say you bet the money line plus 300, and then you're trying to move that during the game. That's a little more difficult. Just the buyers like the longer odds stuff. So I agree with you. I think you can get 100-1 now, and then hope and predict that it's going to be a close game at halftime in the fourth quarter. So I'm with you. I will stake the Packers as well. So that will do it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the games this weekend. Make sure you go download and subscribe to Peacock now before it gets too late. Subscribe, leave a rating, and we will talk to you next week.